Thank you, Acting Speaker, and I rise to support the Workplace Injury Rehabilitation and Compensation Amendment Bill of 2025, and in doing so I just want to begin by acknowledging the work of the Deputy Premier, the Minister for WorkSafe and the TAC, his office, his team, the department, all the stakeholders who have been involved in bringing this bill before the House, but particularly the Workplace Incidents Consultative Committee members, some of whom we had here earlier today, Brett Struess, David Brownlee and Ralph Schneider, amongst many others, for their dedicated work and commitment. I just want to also acknowledge the contribution earlier of the member for Northcote and that very heartfelt contribution around the impact of loss of life and workplace safety on her family and its continued impact that we should all take note of. It's always been, Acting Speaker, only Labor governments and the Labor movement that have been absolutely wholeheartedly dedicated to fighting for and protecting the rights of workers, the wages and conditions of workers and the safety of workers. Because no worker, no matter the background, level of experience, culture, circumstance, should be mistreated, taken advantage of, be injured or worse, killed at work. As set out in the 1907 Harvester decision that first set a living or family wage, every worker, especially unskilled labour, deserves the right to support a partner and 3 children, to feed, house and clothe them. And today, every worker still has that right to go to work, earn a decent living and come home safe to their parents, their partners, their families, their children or their fur friends. And that's why it's always been Labor governments and the Labor movement who have always continued the struggle to support working people and working families via wage rises or advocating for wage increases, the social safety net, unemployment benefits for those who go through those difficult and hardship times, Medicare, paid parental leave, superannuation, the National Disability Insurance Scheme, the Pharmaceutical Benefits Scheme, the right to disconnect legislation that was recently introduced federally, the right to work from home, which we know the federal opposition were opposed to, industrial manslaughter legislation, wage theft legislation, the recent workplace surveillance inquiry at a state level we've just tabled this week in Parliament, which the opposition made a dissenting report to, the Transport Accident Commission established under Labor, and of course WorkSafe and WorkCover. These are all proudly Labor initiatives at a federal or state level that to this day we must continue fighting for, protecting and solidifying. And Acting Speaker, with respect to WorkSafe and WorkCover, this bill is all about those continued efforts to reform and modernise the WorkCover scheme to respond to those contemporary challenges. Just like all those previous landmark reforms that I mentioned, the WorkCover scheme, of course, was designed and introduced by the Kane Labor government in 1985, the year that I was born, primarily to support workers with physical injuries. Its inception and still to this day, WorkCover is all about providing support to those Victorian workers when they may become injured or require insurance protection support, compensation, need workplace claims, worker rehabilitation, return to work pathways and dispute resolution processes. As set out in the annual report of WorkSafe for 23-24, WorkSafe received 35,500 new claims, up from 27,600 in 1920. 18% of those claims relate to mental health injury claims. That's a 16% increase that's up from 16%, I'm sorry, from 22-23. And they've supported 26,300 injured workers to return to work over that year. They've provided $3.4 billion in total scheme payments to support injured workers, conducted 50,100 workplace visits, up 13% from 22-23, and concluded 89% success rate of OH&S prosecutions. However, of course, after 40 years of operation, the reality is that we need to continue modernising the scheme to meet those contemporary standards and expectations. And this bill delivers on our government's commitment to implement the recommendations from 2 separate reviews, the independent review of WorkSafe Victoria's management of complex workers' compensation claims led by Peter Rosen, KC, now Judge Rosen, the Rosen report, and the review of the adequacy of compensation and supports for family members of workers whose death is work-related, that is the Family Support Review. And the bill acquits the recommendations requiring the legislative change which we previously accepted. And importantly, the bill fulfils and implements the advice, the strong advice, the real-life advice that was provided by our government's Workplace Incidents Consultative Committee that's co-chaired by the member for Narre Warren South and people with lived experience. Again, I acknowledge and thank Brett Struess, the non-government co-chair with lived experience, David Brownlee, another member with lived experience, and Ralph Schneider, all of whom have experienced the impact of workplace trauma, death and loss of life in their respective families and have brought that experience here so we can improve things going forward for the future, Deputy Speaker. And this bill, of course, contains quite a number of reforms and recommendations, quite a number of reforms across a number of acts. It will amend the Workplace Injury and Rehabilitation Compensation Act of 2030 and the Accident Compensation Act of 1985, the Occupational Health and Safety Act of 2004, which will improve the experience of injured workers who access the WorkCover scheme, improve the support the scheme provides to family members and dependents of workers whose death is work-related, improve operation of Workplace Injury Commission, streamline administrative arrangements for members of WorkSafe's board, WorkSafe's CEO and hearing loss assessors, and correct technical oversights across a number of other bills. But also, in detail, it will introduce lived experience membership criteria for WorkSafe board advisory committees, being the Occupational Health and Safety Advisory Committee and WorkCover Advisory Committee, improve return to work outcomes for requiring employers to provide return to work coordinators with the assistance and facilities reasonably necessary for the performance of their functions under the Act, and to ensure they receive the appropriate training. It will introduce new compensation entitlements and improve support for family members after a work-related death, allowing family members of a deceased worker to receive provisional payments after a death by suicide, increase weekly pension payable to dependent children of deceased workers, extend the duration of provisional person payment for dependent partners from 12 weeks to 26 weeks, create an entitlement to lump sum payments for economic loss for dependents who are not the partner or a child of a deceased worker. The reforms will create an entitlement to lump sum payments for non-economic loss for close family members of deceased workers, and provide access to a broader range of therapy and other support services for families, including counselling and other required supports to help families through such trauma, and introduce a new entitlement to compensation for forensic cleaning where a worker dies at home or at the home of a family member. The bill also improves the operation of the Workplace Injury Commission and streamlines, as I say, quite a number of other technical reforms. And when combined, Deputy Speaker, these reforms will help us make WorkSafe and WorkCover better, stronger and more resilient in helping support more injured workers and families now and into the future. Locally across my community of Pascoe, Coburg and Brunswick West, we've had many people over the years dedicate their lives through the labour movement, the union movement, to help support and protect the rights of workers over hundreds of, going back almost to the establishment of modern-day Melbourne. But we've also had many people more recently proudly represent hard-working injured local workers, including from Zaparis Lawyers. Peter and Leah Zaparis founded Zaparis Lawyers in 1981 with a genuine spirit of caring and collaboration. As their business grew, so did their family, with their 3 children, Yanni, Paul and Zoe, also going on to eventually join the firm. 40 plus years later, and now home to well over 200 members and workers, Zaparis Lawyers continues to very much support people from all backgrounds with their personal injury and workplace injury cases, including WorkSafe, WorkCover, TAC claims, superannuation and insurance matters, public liability matters, occupational disease cases including asbestos, silicosis and hearing or sensory losses. And regardless of the circumstances, Zaparis and the team always bring a deep sense of expertise, compassion and commitment to support every one of their clients in need of help via a no-win, no-fee approach, making legal support accessible for anyone, regardless of the background, Deputy Speaker. And it was a real pleasure to recently join Yanni Zaparis for the official opening of their new Northern Hub office at 5759 Cooper Street in Epping. It was also a pleasure to be joined by my friend, the member for Broadmeadows, Senator Jana Stewart, and the member for Thomastown as well. But Speaker, these reforms will also continue helping injured and impaired workers across my community of Marybeck. Since being elected, I've been approached by several constituents seeking assistance with their WorkSafe and WorkCover claims or concerns, and one of those is Glenn, a lifetime local resident, and he's a previous small business owner who commenced more recently a new career and role across the transport and construction sectors. He approached me raising concern about his case after having experienced increased serious instances of workplace bullying, harassment and aggressive behaviour towards him. His health, his mental health, his well-being began to seriously deteriorate through severe stress, anxiety, which was seriously impairing his work capacity. Glenn was subsequently diagnosed with adjustment disorder with mixed anxiety and depressed mood resulting from a workplace harassment, bullying and pressure. An extremely concerning diagnosis given his responsibility in driving heavy trucks in the transport and construction sector. And following his diagnosis and subsequent negative response from his employer, Glenn subsequently lodged a workplace claim through WorkCover, which was determined and approved. However, despite the approval, Glenn contacted me to raise concerns as he was yet to receive any payment, back payment or support 10 weeks after his claim was approved via his employer as required. I was very pleased to have been able to assist Glenn to rectify that issue upon making representations questions to the relevant minister. But that's why we are moving this bill, to help improve the lives of injured workers.